on week 5. We're on the last week of the 5 principles. And this 5th principle is live the truth we know, even when it's hard, even when it asks something of us, because it's in those moments that we get to discover something about ourselves, something so strong that perhaps we haven't been paying attention to, that perhaps we haven't been able to honor or respect. Perhaps we haven't been able to nurture it and give it the space and the room. It asks us to be courageous, because in order to change this world, we have to show up in it, anchoring these principles of truth. And that is the 5th, and don't get me started, right? It's not really a principle. It's a practice. But so to review, right, our principles abbreviated. The first principle is there is only one power and one presence. All right, we call that our prime principle, that there is nothing outside, there's nothing separate, there's no other. There is just one thing. And that if there's truly only one power and one presence, it means that I'm not separate from that power and presence, which means that I am divine. And if that power and presence is creative, which we know it is, then that means I am creative, that I carry that same capacity within myself. And it is through the practices that people still call the 5 principles. So it's through our practices that we get to live into these 3 principles. Through prayer and meditation, we consciously align with the one power. That was what we talked about last week. So the 5th principle, Davenport in her book, The 5 Principles, describes it this way. And this is pretty classic. This is actually classic Centers for Spiritual Living, classic unity. Knowing and understanding the laws of life, also called truth, are not enough. A person must also live the truth that he or she knows. And in here, we would say that they know, yes? Right? So this idea that it's not just about theoretical knowledge. It's not just about what we study and read in books, that it's about actually activating it in time and in space. So Unity and Marin's version of the 5th principle is we are the presence of God in action. We act on these principles. Prayer, meditation, and study are not meant to be in isolation, but rather to assist our true divine nature to live, move, and demonstrate God consciousness in the world. Can we feel that? We're not talking about what we shouldn't do, which the other principle does, right? We're just saying what we are here to be and do, that we live into these principles, that we make them manifest in time and in space. So in a nutshell, we would say that the first 3 principles are there's only one power, one presence, we are divine, we are creators, and the practices are we use prayer and meditation to consciously align ourselves, and we live this truth in the world. Amen. And that's important. Can I get an amen? Because that's important, that we are actually bringing these principles into the world even when it makes us uncomfortable. Even when it's asking us to feel vulnerable, even through our pain, through our anger, we are being invited to show up as something that is, that song, think about how inspirational that song was for us here today. The gift of him not standing in his silence and the pain, but finding an outlet for it that could touch our hearts as well. Allow us to be transformed, uplifted, and changed. And this is what we do for each other. This is what spiritual community is all about. We're not doing this in isolation. So we've talked a lot about being a divine human, that we have the relative world, which is what is actually like taste, touch, feel, smell. And then we have the realm of the absolute. We have the spiritual awareness of love, which has no opposite, of peace that actually has no opposite. We're talking about something that is immutable and unchangeable. And the question that we keep asking ourselves always is, where are we creating from? Are we creating from our divinity, or are we creating from our humanness? Because when we're creating from our humanness, we just create more humanness, right? Anybody in here relate to that? Anybody in here create more humanness in their life all the time? Okay. So meditation provides us with an inner experience of our divine nature. And affirmative prayer is the activation of our divine nature in time and in space, so that we have an inner awareness and stillness, and we are also actually being called to how do we translate love, big L, how do I actually translate that into something I can do, something I can be, something I can actually show up as in the world? So what you can recognize, you can realize. So you know all those people that you admire so much? And you recognize in them their greatness, and you recognize in them their beauty or their wisdom. Guess what? If you can recognize it, you can realize it. You'll realize it the way you're going to realize it. Not going to realize it exactly the same way that other person realizes it. It'll be your unique expression of that realization. But then you get to share that with the world. You get to bring your gift to the world. So our affirmative prayer process mirrors that understanding. So we can recognize the divine God is as beauty, wisdom, power, you name it, right? If you can recognize it, you can realize it. And then we know that that's who I am. That's the prayer process. We start with something out there, feels separate from us, and then we say, oh, no. It's actually not separate. It's me. I am this thing. And if I know that I am this thing, I can then realize it somehow. And the chart that I created just gives you a sense of it, right? And if you want to look at affirmative prayer more deeply, look at my talk from last week. And I'm going to be teaching an affirmative prayer workshop on May 6th from 10 to 3. So you can come and take the workshop too. But for example, if God is wisdom and I am wisdom, that means that I can discern what is mine to do. If God is power and I am power, I can actually have self-mastery. I can actually show up as a change agent in the world. Can you feel how we're taking something that's big and beautiful and kind of ambiguous, and we're actually making it useful in time and in space? Now, this is all wonderful. How many people in here have had the most powerful affirmative prayer possible feel as if you have been changed at core, and then a week later you find that you're still showing up the same way that you were before? Anybody in here relate to that? Amen. So it is a practice, right? It's something we have to keep coming back to again and again and again and again. And here's the piece that we are being invited to live this into the world, not just for our close family and friends, not just for our pets, we love them, but we are being invited to live this into the greater world. And that can be a little scary, can be a little intimidating. And what I want to talk to today are some of the ways that we get in our own way of how we can live in the world. So oftentimes when people come into New Thought, they think that this teaching means that they are going to be protected from now on from anything truly horrible happening to them, right? That the world is going to go on around out there, but I have control of my experience, and so I can build myself a lovely little bubble. And everything that's going on out there is just what's going on out there. But I'm safe and cozy here in my world. That is what I call magical thinking. It's magical thinking that somehow we can remove ourselves from our humanness. We are in these bodies. We are in these bodies. We are going to get sick. We're going to break an ankle. Those things are going to happen because we're moving through time and in space. So rather than, the point of this teaching isn't to protect us from the outside world, it's the opposite. It's so that we can bring wholeness to the world. It's not about protecting ourselves from everything that's out there. It's about, because there is no out there, but it's about showing up and anchoring something. So this is one of my favorite images. When I think about what does it mean to anchor in the world these principles. So this lighthouse are our principles. They are the foundation. You could call them your faith. And the storms come and the surges move through. And do you see that person just standing there very chill as these waves are coming over? This is what we're called to do and to be in the world. And to not hide. He's not hiding in the lighthouse, is he? He's out in the world. So who we truly are is this divine being that is whole, that is magnificent, that is radiant, that is joy, that is grace, that is love, that is the truth of who we are. And yet all too often, this is who we think we are. We think we're broken. We think there's something about us that isn't whole. We think that there is something inherently within us that makes us less than. We think we are the exception. And what those exceptions are, when that happens, when we forget our divinity, because that's what's happening, right? Is we find ourselves in what the Quantum Living course, which I'm going to be doing on Saturday, anybody a plug for Quantum Living? What Quantum Living would say is that all of a sudden we think we're in enemy territory. We think there's something that can hurt us or harm us or do something to us. And when we're in enemy territory, we have uncomfortable feelings. We have unpleasant sensations. I get this thing in my belly, and like I know that I'm not in alignment when I get that thing in my belly. I don't even know what it is necessarily, but I'll feel it, and I'll be like, I got to pay attention to something because there's a little alarm bell going off inside here that's telling me that I feel less than right now. And we get the thoughts. Anybody here relate to the thoughts? I should have, I would have, why didn't I? I could have, I should have said, if only I had said, why didn't I say? If I could go back, if I could, maybe I can talk to them again, and maybe right? The whole tape that just goes and goes and goes. So what we are trying to do with all of that is we're trying to not pay attention to our pain and our wounds and our loss and our fear and our unworthiness and our not enoughness and our unmet needs. Anybody in here not have any unmet needs? Anybody in here? Yeah, right? This is part of our human experience. So let's not try and pretend that it's not part of it. Let's actually bring our tools to this space, this place, because our wounds untended blind us to our true nature. If we do not look at our wounds, if we do not pay attention to those places, those spaces that are sore, if we do not consciously bring healing, light, love, energy to those places, we are cutting ourselves off from our own divinity because we're buying into a narrative that something about us is broken. And that is not what we believe. There is always, so it's this balance between our inner perfection as a divine being and how we are expressing that in time and in space. And is there always going to be a gap? Yes. That can actually be fun. It doesn't have to be horrifying. It can be fun to want to keep experiencing more of your divinity, knowing that you are never going to fully express that divinity, because guess why? It's infinite. It's infinite. Your divinity is infinite. So we take those wounds, we take those parts of ourselves that we don't really like, that we think we don't like. And let me be clear. The decisions that we make about the parts of ourselves that we don't like are not true. So if you grew up in a family where everybody was a doctor and you wanted to be a singer, within that family, your creative energy might have been seen as a negative thing. And you might have taken on that messaging. But if you grew up in a family that is completely creative, and you are somebody who wants to be a doctor or a lawyer, and you are very on it and very structured and very organized, you might have been told that that's not worthy or good, that you're supposed to be something else. So we take these messages on, and I want to be clear, we decide them about ourselves. And then we don't want to be that. So we shove them down like beach balls in the pool, and we try to keep them under the ground, right? And if I put them down here and I hold them down, nobody will notice. And guess what? The water's clear. Everybody can see them. Everybody can see your beach balls. You are not hiding a thing. You may think you are, but you are not hiding a thing. And what happens is you're pushing down those beach balls. I'm not structured. That's not who I am. And what happens? All of a sudden, they go poof, and they explode in your face. Anybody experience anything like that? So what is exploding? When they explode, how they show up is as blame and anger and judgment and resistance and withdrawal and efforting and justifying. These are all strategy and coping mechanisms that we use to try to navigate the wounded places that we have. So it's your fault, not mine. You should have told me that. If you had told me that, everything would have gone fine. How dare you? How dare you talk to me that way? Anger, judgment. That person is completely in left field. They have no idea what they're doing. Resistance. Oh, I don't know about that. I don't know. I don't know. Just, I don't know. I'm not feeling it. Withdrawal. How many people in here do that? Oh, I'm out. This is not what I want in my world, so I'm out. I'm going to exit this completely. Efforting. If I just send one more email, and if I put it in all caps and in red, maybe they will understand what I am trying to tell them. And then justifying, of course, right? Well, I had to. They gave me no choice. Can we recognize all of these coping mechanisms? And can we recognize that all they're doing is trying to keep ourselves safe? That it's all things about ourself that we're uncomfortable with. So the number one way that we keep ourselves safe, so what's happening in this, right, I'm jumping ahead of myself here, is that we are being reactive rather than responsive to the world around us. And if you remember, our third principle in Unity in Marin says that we are responsible for our consciousness. And we talked about that meaning able to respond. Now, if we're so caught up in the beach balls exploding all around us, we are not actually able to respond, are we? We are perpetuating something rather than actually anchoring something true in the world. And we do this a lot through projection. So we project onto others all the things we don't like about ourselves. Anybody in here ever notice that it's the same kind of people that bug us all the time? It's not really about them. It's really about you. And breathe into that, because that can be a hard one, right? We project onto the world the things we don't like, we think are wrong. We don't want to be that ourselves. And because we don't want to be it ourselves, we see it everywhere. Everywhere. And you ever notice how there are some things that trigger you, but they don't trigger your friends? Your friends are like, what's the deal? It's not a big deal. What do you mean it's not a big deal? And that's because you got plugged into something around your own reactivity, and they don't have that. They don't have that wound. They don't have that narrative. They don't have that story. So they're not seeing it. So, Carl Jung says, the shadow is the block that separates us most effectively from the divine voice. Pretty big, huh? Now, Cindy Acker and I have had conversations about this use of this word shadow. and how there can often be, for BIPOC folks, this oppression of darkness always being something bad. That anything that's linked to darkness becomes something that's negative. So I rewrote it, because I do that, right? I'm rewriting Carl Jung. And what we're going to say is, what we disown about ourselves blocks us from knowing our divinity. And can you feel the truth of that? Yes. What we are saying, I am not, as actually becoming an obstacle to our knowing who we actually are. Because there's so much energy that goes into trying to keep those beach balls under the surface that it is taking up every ounce of our focus and our intentionality. Right? It becomes all consuming. So what if we're able to let that go? Because what we're talking about in our fifth principle is live into the truth. Live into the truth. This is who we truly are. We truly are divine, here to show up as love and joy and beauty and creativity. And we forget a lot. In the Quantum Living course, we call it falling off your cue card. Right? Your cue card is all the things you know that's true about yourself. That you're loved, that you're vision, that you're clarity, that you're joy. And when we fall off that card, we fall into that place of deep wounding within ourselves. And the narrative that's living in us around that. So when we are saying that we live from divine inspiration, and this is one of the living from divine inspiration was one of the pieces that came up during our vision, mission, and core values work, right? What we mean is that we're awake and aware, we're paying attention. It's so easy to project outward on other people. If only they would, they should. And what happens when we're awake and aware is we get to say, oh, what am I doing right now? What am I doing right now? Am I blaming? Am I justifying? You begin to notice when you're stepping into those strategy and coping mechanisms, and you get to reclaim the projection. We call it reclaiming the projection. And we get to say, oh, what if that's me? I really feel stupid right now. I'm saying they're stupid, but it's because I really feel that I'm stupid in this moment. Oh, now can I do some healing work around that for myself? Can I be honest and authentic with myself and with others about what's really alive for me and not make it all about them? Can I be compassionate? This is huge. Because the parts of ourselves that we disown, right, are horrible sometimes. Those voices, sometimes they're great gifts. Sometimes they're amazing. We call that the golden shadow, right? The things that are beautiful that we have said, I'm not that. But sometimes those tapes are all about, you're not enough. You really think you can do that? You want to try? Okay, go ahead, right? Is that familiar to anybody in here? So can we bring compassion to ourselves as we're actually bringing those voices up and in the forefront? Rather than trying to shove them down under the water, we actually bring them into the light and the dark. It's everywhere, Cindy. It really is everywhere. We bring it into this space of compassion and wholeness. And as we bring it into this space of compassion and wholeness, something can be healed and transformed. But we have to be committed to that. We have to be committed to our divinity. We have to own that that's actually the truth of who we are. All the rest of it is noise. But we have to be brave enough to let that. Anybody in here, when they first started meditating, notice how everything got even noisier as you tried to get quiet? Like you were just hearing even more than you had ever heard before. It's not that those things weren't running. It was just you never got quiet enough to actually hear them. They have always been running at that volume, at that pace, at that intensity. You've just learned coping mechanisms to not pay attention to them. But they're still impacting your life. They're impacting your choices. They're impacting your relationships. and how you connect with other people. There is only one power and one presence. We are divine. We are creators. Through prayer and meditation, we align with that one power, and we live this in the world through being awake and aware and compassionate and loving and curious about what's actually happening within ourselves. So we didn't, you can kind of see it. I can't see it on my screen. So in the quantum living, the question that gets asked all the time is, who have you come here to be? Have you come here to be your humanness that believes in your brokenness? Or have you come here to be the radiant being that you actually are? And what are you invited to let go of during this time of Lent? Like, let's take advantage of the collective consciousness that's all about release and letting go and say, what can I let go of that will allow me to show up more fully in the world? How can I actually be love in the world, power in the world, joy in the world? So, Jason, can you come on up? We're going to take this into a time of meditation, because that's a lot, yes? And all of it, we want to hold in compassion. Can you breathe into that with me? Where are the perfectionists in the room? Where are you? I know you're there, right? We have to let the perfectionism go because it's linked to the idea that we will never be good enough. We can allow ourselves to strive for excellence in all we do. And that's a moving target. Can you feel that? What was excellent for me a year ago is not going to be what's excellent for me right now. So we want to embrace that idea that we are here to grow and evolve from compassion. So as those hard tapes, narratives show up in our understanding, we don't want to beat ourselves up. We don't want to lay more of that wrongness on ourselves. We want to bring the truth of who we are to those parts of ourselves that feel separate and alone. So let's breathe into that for a moment. Whatever in your heart, whatever's gotten stirred up for you, just breathing into the wholeness that is the truth of who you actually are. Allowing the story to fall away. Allowing the beingness, the radiance that you are, the wholeness that you are, the joy that you are, the beauty that you are, to make itself known. That vibrational frequency of the strength that you have within, the love that you have, the grace that you are. And as we rest in this space, just invite the question, who have I come here to be? Who have I truly come here to be? And what do I need to release to allow my becoming to happen in time and in space? Resting in the truth of who and what you truly are. As we rest in the silence, I invite you to just listen to what is seeking to be released so that you can be more present, more love, more joy. So let's rest here for a few minutes in the silence. How good it is to be still and know. How good it is to activate our capacity to choose anew. So I see and I know that as we each go forth this day, that this process continues to unfurl within us as we continue to listen. Who have I come here to be? What is seeking to be released? That I may truly be living a fully inspired life, divinely inspired. And gratitude for this and so much more. Just giving thanks, just opening your heart in gratitude and blessing yourself, blessing each other, all the ways we think we fail, just blessing it and holding it in compassion. This is who we have come here to be. And so it is. Amen. Ashe. So the affirmation today was, I am consciously living a fully inspired life. Can we know this together? I am consciously living a fully inspired life. And so it is. Amen.